Just asking a simple question. Who told you you could adopt a policy like that?
Wait, I'll have my manager talk to you.
You just want to sit here and just harass people.
I'm just asking questions.
Why do you need to ask the questions?
Because I'm affected by this policy. You guys have gotten very irate over a very simple question.
Why do you need to ask questions?
You don't think what's going on here raises any kinds of questions?
No, I don't. I'm just tired of seeing people that are working being harassed by people like you. I'm
People
tired
like
of
who?
it. Like you.
What do you
Just
mean, like me?
Asking random questions to them, like they're following policies. If you have a question,
I know, I have a question about the policy. And they don't want to answer it.
they gave you the answer. It just wasn't satisfying to you.
No. They haven't given me
Wear
an
a
answer.
mask because you're told to. There, that's your answer.
Right, but that's not how the world works.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Says,
if you want to come
according
into a
to who?
store, if you want to come into a store, you follow their guidelines and policies. You don't want to follow them, don't come into the store.
The store needs to follow the bylaw. Well, I'm being told that you guys are allowed to do anything you want because you're a private store.
I'm not even going to get into that.
She said that you guys were exempt from, you did not have to follow the bylaw. She said that.
We are able to enforce a policy however we would like to.
Any policy.
When it regards to this, yeah.
So you're excluding people based on their medical conditions. Could you exclude people for other things that are out of their
So
control?
now you're taking it to the race level, and
Listen,
you want to play that card.
please.
Like, I understand you don't like these questions. You're uncomfortable by these questions,
Sir, I'm asking you to leave.
but it's not because of
I'm
me.
asking you to leave the conversation. Please.
Okay, I
I'm
can-
asking you to leave right now.
So for the record, you believe you do not have to follow the bylaw.
Sorry.
I know
Sorry.
that I don't. In this instance, I know we don't have to.
This is Dan Dicks here reporting for Press for Truth, and the clips that you just saw were of a home hardware employee stating for the record that they do not have to follow the mask bylaws, even if that means violating someone's rights, even if that means denying an essential service to somebody who has a medical disability. And joining me on the line right now to talk about all this is the man who was behind the camera, Chris Horlacher. Chris, thanks so much for bringing this story to us here at Press for Truth. Now, I want to get you to break down what happened, but before we do, for context, I'd like to play the full 3-minute clip, completely unedited, so people can see that, and then we'll get right back into the interview. Check this one out, folks.
Just asking a simple question. Who told you you could adopt a policy like
Just
that?
wait, I'll have my manager talk to you.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Probably home hardware.
Okay, but who at home hardware?
Why don't you step out of the way? Like, look at how many people you're blocking.
I'm not in the way.
You just want to sit here and just harass people.
I'm just asking questions.
Why do you need to ask the questions?
Because I'm affected by this policy.
So go.
You were going to refuse
call the
service.
City of Hamilton. Call the city of Hamilton.
Okay.
Don't put it on them.
Why not?
Are you recording me?
I absolutely am.
Yeah, that's great.
Because you guys have gotten very irate over a very simple question.
Why do you need to ask questions?
You don't think what's going on here raises any kinds
No,
of questions?
I don't. I'm in a home hardware. I'm buying a garbage can.
Okay, and
are you buying?
you have to wear a mask to go anywhere? You don't find that odd?
No, I don't. I just put my mask on. I stay within 6 feet of people. That's all I do.
But why?
Because I just want to buy a garbage can. They just want to work.
Yeah, I'm wearing a mask. I'm social distancing. I'm just asking the question, why?
Why does he need to answer? Why does she need to answer your questions?
Because
You
I don't
have
know
a
why.
question that the
You all
government
seem very
enforces-
confident that you know why,
Oh,
but nobody
it does
can
not-
tell me why.
I'm not. What am I, confident? I'm just a customer. I'm just tired of seeing people that are working being harassed by people like you. I'm
People
tired
like
of
who?
it. Like you.
What do you
Just
mean, like me?
Asking random questions to them, like they're following policies. If you have a question,
I know, I have a question about the policy. And they don't want to answer it.
they gave you the answer. It just wasn't satisfying to you.
No. They haven't given me
Wear
an
a mask
answer.
because you're told to. There, that's your answer.
Right, but that's not how the world works.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Says,
if you want to come
according
into a
to who?
store, if you want to come into a store, you follow their guidelines and policies. You don't want to follow them, don't come into the store.
The store needs to follow the bylaw.
No, just not happy that he has to wear a mask while he's in here.
Well, please, well,
I'm just asking who told
You
them.
can go outside where you don't have to wear a mask now.
That's fine.
Carry on this conversation.
But
Can you please stop the conversation?
But I'm being told that you guys are allowed to do anything you want because you're a private store.
I'm not even going to get into that.
She said that you guys were exempt from, you did not have to follow the bylaw.
Because
She
we're a
said that.
private company, we are able to enforce a policy however we would like to.
Any policy.
When it regards to this, yeah.
So you're excluding people based on their medical conditions. Could you exclude people for other things that are out of their
So
control?
now he's taking it to the race level, and it's,
Listen,
you want to play that card?
please.
Like, I understand you don't like these questions. You're uncomfortable by these
Sir,
questions,
I'm asking you to leave.
but it's not because of
I'm
me.
asking you to leave for the conversation. Please.
Okay,
I'm
I
just
can-
asking you to leave right now.
So for the record, you believe you do not have to follow the bylaw.
Sorry.
I know
Sorry.
that I don't. In this instance, I know we don't have to.
Okay.
And there you have it. As she says in her own words on record, she believes they do not have to follow the bylaw. So, Chris, this is just unbelievable that they would, treat you, you type of people, somebody who dares to ask a question, that they would treat you like that. So, maybe just start us off from the beginning. Walk us through the whole thing. How did this whole event transpire for you that day?
Well, I was out with my daughter, who is about 22 months old. And so we're going about our day, running a few errands, in and out of stores. And by and large, most of the stores in the area are sticking to the letter of the bylaw. So in Hamilton, the Hamilton bylaw is 20-155. And the exemptions from the mask requirement are in section 4. And it's an itemized list, and it's pretty much the same list of exemptions you'd find in all of the bylaws all around Southern Ontario, all across the country. They have this list of exemptions in there because the bylaws would otherwise conflict against the Human Rights Code and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So they have to be in there. Hamilton is particularly generous with their list of exemptions because the last item on the list, it actually says anybody who says they're exempt is exempt. So they've given anyone a blanket exemption who doesn't want to wear a mask, which is fantastic. It's one I avail myself of as many times as I possibly can. But when my daughter and we finally got to the Home Hardware, right out front of the store, there was a sign saying no medical exemptions allowed. And, you know, I kind of made that same face you're making right now, like, oh no, what kind of people am I going to find in here? And so, you know, in any other situation, maybe I might be feeling a little more, you know, let's see what happens. But I was with my daughter. She's 22 months old. I'm not looking to get into any heated arguments with anyone. I just wanted to go in, get my little power splitter and get out, and that's what I did. So I put on my mask. I go in the store, no problem. And at the checkout, I asked the cashier, who crafted this policy? Who can I talk to about this policy? And to me, having worked in retail, you know, throughout my high school and early university days, that's not an odd question to field. People ask about your return policy, for example, all the time, and maybe they might even complain and want to know who they can complain to and who do you have in your company to talk to about your policies. This shouldn't have been a controversial question for them to get hit with, but almost immediately they start calling for managers. More people come up to the front of the store. I am sort of fenced in by employees between them and the wall and the exit of the store. And And even a customer in the store joins in to start berating me, calling me, oh, you're just one of those people, and why do you have to ask questions? Just shut up and obey. And I was, when I saw things escalating the way they did and how quickly they escalated them, I knew I had to start filming, because we're barely, I think, a week or 2 weeks after that incident at the Canadian Tire over in BC, and I didn't want to be the next guy to get hauled out, with my 22-month-old baby right there in the stroller right next to me. But it was two women who, seeing a guy with a baby deciding to launch into him just for asking, who do I talk to about this bylaw? Who can I complain to? Who, you're violating the bylaw. If the mask bylaw applies, then the exemptions also apply.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think triggered these women so quickly and so much? Maybe in terms of the customer, let's take a look at her. Is it because of watching too much television and listening too much radio? I mean, it seems like a very quick reaction to all of a sudden just not even assume you have a condition or whatever, just to pounce on you like that. What do you think that comes from?
Oh, I think it's definitely a form of social conditioning. Something between Stockholm syndrome and just plain old bigotry.
Right.
I never thought in my life that I would ever hear myself being referred to as one of those people by anyone. And that, when I heard that myself, I said, oh, okay, so this is the kind of perception I'm dealing with. And so the media, and you can see this in how they reported on the situation at the Canadian Tire. On one hand, the governments all over the country are saying we need to be courteous and kind to people with a medical need. We don't want to stigmatize these people who can't wear masks. And in the city of Hamilton even said it's vital that we do not do this. And yet the media is, particularly in how they've worded the situation in Burnaby, they're not doing anything to help that situation. They're actively identifying, segregating people who cannot comply with a mask bylaw, despite the vast majority of people in Canada not wanting bylaws, not wanting lockdowns. There's no scientific basis for them. There is no threat from COVID-19. It's not the COVID-19 pandemic. It's the COVID-19 psychosis. Mm-hmm. And that's it. A psychosis is the only way you can explain the absolute hysteria and anger at which these women reacted to having their paradigm questioned.
Yeah. This whole incident brings up really, really interesting questions about, how to handle these things, moving forward. And I think you handled it well in terms of dealing with the employee who said that she believes they can violate the bylaw. This brings up a serious question in regards to private property rights. Now, at the Canadian Tire store, when the man was asked to leave, sure, at that point, if he says no and he's trespassing on private property, at that point, they should call the police, and the police should be dealing with somebody like that. But in the case of the home hardware here, they seem to think because they have private property rights, this gives them the right to basically follow any bylaw in any manner or shape or way that they choose to. How can we explain this discrepancy here? And is it true that just because you have private property rights doesn't mean that you can just blatantly violate the law?
Exactly. You can't simply assault someone for being on your property, particularly when you open your doors and bring them in. You can't say, oh, well, you're on my property now, so I'm allowed to do whatever I want to do to you. You can't commit a crime against someone just because they're in your vicinity or you happen to own the building that they're in after you've invited them in. Likewise, you cannot craft a policy or have any sort of policy that goes against existing law. And so the employee of the Home Hardware was trying to explain to me that, oh, well, because we allow for curbside pickup, we don't have to give mask exemptions. Now, nowhere in the bylaw does it say any of that. But they seem to be absolutely certain that this is okay. And it seems to me that this is what public health officials are going around behind everyone's back telling them. They're being told to not honor these exemptions, not follow the Human Rights Code, not follow the Charter of Rights and Freedom. And so, we have a situation now where the de facto governing body of municipalities, of provinces, of the federal government is now no longer the parliament and the elected officials and city councillors. It's the medical bureaucrats. Now, yeah, it's a strange upside down world, man.
So it's like they're using the health officials almost as lobbyists or just people to go out there and convince these people to violate the exemption rules, right?
Exactly, and you can't just violate a person's rights and then give them a crummy alternative and say, well, look, it's okay now, because everybody's seen the pictures of the whites only fountain and the coloreds only fountain. That's still racism. It doesn't not become racist just oh, well, look, black people, you get your own fountain now. You get your curbside fountain and the white people can go inside and use the inside fountain. That is still racism. That is still completely against the Human Rights Code to do that. But now here we have store owners absolutely certain in their belief that they substitute a black person for someone with a medical disability now. They're doing the same thing. And it was against the law. It's against the law back then. It's against the law right now. Mm-hmm. And, for me personally, as an anarcho-capitalist, I'm not a big fan of laws, but, there's the underlying moral principle here is you can't expect to control someone when you open your doors to them, invite them in, mm-hmm. and then say, now you have to do as I say.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
You have to undergo a medical procedure, you have to do this, you have to do that.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, you shut up, obey, or get out.
Now, did I hear this correctly? It sounded to me like near the end of the video, the female employee said something about race, like as if you were trying to play a race card, when that wasn't brought up at all. It seems to me the only time it was brought up was by the Karen behind the counter. Did I hear that correctly?
You did. This was a part of the discussion that would happen before I switched on the camera. But so I had asked the employee, I had asked them, look, you're discriminating against people on the basis of their medical condition. Could you discriminate against people on the basis of race?
Good question. I like to point out.
It's all covered under the Human Rights Code.
Right. Yeah. It's like denying somebody for being transgender or for being in a wheelchair.
Precisely. And so all of these situations are protected in the Human Rights Code and by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The provinces are still bound by this. The municipalities are still bound by this. The federal government is bound by this. To my knowledge, those acts are still law. They have not been suspended. So those rights are intact. The medical officers cannot wave a hand and make them go away. Neither can a private business owner. They are bound by the Human Rights Code just as much as everybody else is. And so, you know, just as it would be illegal for them to say no blacks allowed, or no women allowed, or no Jews allowed, or you know, pick your group of humans, pick your identifying characteristic, whatever it is, and just say we're going to exclude you. Well, you know, sorry, Human Rights Code says you don't get to do that, and it doesn't matter if you're a government bureaucracy or a private business. That's not something we do here in Canada.
That's right. And you actually emailed, I believe it was the company heads, and tell us a little bit about what you said to them in the email. First of all, let us know who you emailed and what it is you were trying to explain to them, and are you expecting to hear back?
So this all came on the heels of several interactions at several different stores who had said that they no longer have to provide a medical exemption. And so after some questioning on several independent accounts now, they have said that it was public health and bylaw enforcement who told them that they didn't have to honor the exemption anymore. So having this corroborated now by multiple independent sources, I wrote an email to the mayor and bylaw enforcement and also the City of Hamilton's chief medical officer, asking them, or well, laying out what I had been hearing from everybody, sending them a copy of the video I had taken at the Home Hardware, and asking them to explain themselves. Because if city officials or even provincial officials are going around saying, you know, you don't have to follow the bylaw, we don't want you, you know, yeah, sure, these exemptions are our law, but we don't want you to follow the law, and we're going to turn a blind eye for you doing so. Now we have a very, very dangerous situation where government is selectively not enforcing the law and putting people at risk as a consequence of doing this.
And you were literally wearing a mask at the time, and they still treated you like that, right? I mean, you had a baby in your hands and had a mask on your face.
Exactly. Well, that's the most shocking thing about the whole situation. Is it's not that I went in there without any mask, insisted I had the right to be there, and immediately, you know, wanted to make a situation out of it all. I wanted to go in, get my item, pay for it, get the email or phone number of someone in Home Hardware I could talk to about their policy, and go. But the moment I asked about the policy is when things very quickly went off of the rails, and you know, I felt harassed and verbally assaulted, intimidated, you know, and you know, what am I supposed to do with my baby right there?
Yeah. Well, I'm of the feeling that these people are watching far too much television, and these days the TV is often telling them that people like you are the problem. People like you are selfish. People like you are why we can't have nice things. Have you heard that type of narrative coming from the mainstream?
Oh, absolutely. That's coming from CTV, CBC, the Globe and Mail, you know, every major news outlet. And even social media is carefully curating their content so that people only see that type of framing of every situation and issue. And anything to the contrary is being branded conspiracy theory and misinformation and fake news. But, you know, the final word of COVID-19 is less people died in Canada or in any other country in 2020 than 2019. As a pandemic, it did not exist. You cannot see it in the data. And it's not like the World Health Organization hasn't been caught doing this before. The Council of Europe, which is Europe's leading human rights organization, founded by Winston Churchill, a guy most of your listeners may have heard of, they examined the swine flu and the avian flu pandemics and came to the conclusion that the WHO had deliberately drummed up a global fear of these pandemics in order to assist pharmaceutical companies in selling vaccines. And so, you know, why break a strategy that seems to work? Only this time they've really turned up the juice on it. Forget turn it up to 11. We're up to, 15, 16 now.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's getting increasingly crazy out there. And when I'm seeing these things happen to guys like you, it just sometimes gets my blood boiling that people are losing their minds this much over this. So I guess, just to sum things up here, what are your final thoughts on the whole situation and where you see all of this heading in the near future?
Well, the optimist in me wants to believe that, this is eventually going to wear itself out, and even the most ardent dyed-in-the-wool COVID-19 fearmongers eventually finally have to give up this goose chase for a deadly pandemic. I don't see that happening, unfortunately. I see this getting worse and worse and worse because nobody aside from voices such as yourself are doing much to counter this crazy narrative that we all need to stay in our homes and we all need to wear masks everywhere we go, and one mask is not first, wearing masks is a stupid idea. Don't do it. WHO, Fauci, both on video saying this. Then, oh no, we should wear masks. Now we have to wear masks. And then masks are the most important thing we could be doing, even more than a vaccine. Now one mask is not enough. Now you need 2 masks, and now 3 masks. So we're not getting better at figuring this out. It goes back to psychosis. The way to deal with someone who's suffering from psychosis is not to meet them halfway, because then they will just keep pulling you further and further and further into their psychosis. You have to stand on the other side of it and say, no, it's okay, come over here now. You can do it. But the media certainly isn't doing that. The politicians aren't doing that. And unfortunately, those seem to be the only voices the vast majority of people want to listen to in this.
Well, I hope at this stage in the game, we can just lead by example and show people what the answers are and what the solutions are. And it's quite simple, really. Become completely self-sustainable. No longer be reliant on the banks or the governments or even the grocery store, for that matter. If you're able to get a homestead, if you're able to grow your own food, if you're able to become self-sufficient, that's the one thing that the government fears the most here moving forward. And that's what I want to focus on. That's what I hope that other people are going to start focusing on as well, is taking those right steps, getting out of debt, making sure that you are completely self-sustainable. That's going to be the most important thing, I feel, moving forward, because I agree with you, Chris. This is going to be getting a heck of a lot worse before it gets better. So we really need to focus on doing the right thing, what's right for ourselves and our family moving forward. So is there anything you wanted to plug or anything like that? I don't know what you're up to these days, or if you're still on social media or stuff like that, but yeah, if you got anything you wanted to mention, you can shout it out.
Nothing in particular. Stay liquid, stay mobile, stay safe.
Yes. Excellent advice. Once again, thank you for coming to us with this story. I think you handled that situation in a really, really respectful way, and considering what you were facing with there, I think you handled it really well. Guys, please share this video. These are the kind of stories that really need to go viral. People need to understand that these things are happening, and they need to understand it from the perspective of the people who are going through it, not from the perspective of the mainstream news, who's going to completely twist this once it gets out there. So be sure to click that thumbs up button and share this one. And once again, thank you so much, Chris. You keep up the great work.
Thank you, Dan.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free.